Good evening once again to all five of you. So let's get started. First, we're going to start with Mr. Bentley, who is going to start with giving us the overall perspective of the cassava industry, how it's going at the moment, and how you foresee it to be in the near and far future, please.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Yes.
Where are we? There. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's been quite an experience for us so far. You have no idea what was going on back there. So, hard act to follow. I'd just like to give you a little bit of an overview tonight about some of the structural issues facing cassava in Southeast Asia. So, these are some points I've made to many of you before, but this is to give some sort of an update. So, let's start. So, what's the purpose of cassava in Asia? Where is the role for this crop? The clear purpose is that Asia's facing a growing deficit of carbohydrate. So on a corn equivalent, maybe 70 million metric tons of carbohydrate required in Asia, and this is growing at 8% per year. Also, carbohydrate prices in Asia are very expensive. We'll see this in a moment. At the same time, Thailand, in particular, in Southeast Asia, has this rather interesting and efficient carbohydrate. So the question is, shouldn't the market be encouraging a little bit more Thai cassava? And is it? So let's look at this.
Yes.
So the first point. This is the difference in the corn price. So Mr. Jin and I were talking about this at dinner. Mr. Jin's from China. This is the difference between the corn price in China and the corn price in the US. And the red line is the cost of freight from the US to China for corn. What this is telling you is that today, corn prices in China are maybe $200 over the world market. So to put that in perspective, this is $200 on a 200 million plus ton crop. So each year, the Chinese government is effectively subsidizing the corn industry with $45 billion. Imagine what $45 billion would do in the cassava industry. This is equivalent to the total investment in corn hybrids that have been made in the last 20 years. So massive amounts of money are going into supporting corn prices in China. Now, what effect is that having? What you can see up here is these are the financials of one of the big Chinese starch producers, Global Biochem. Many of you will know them well. And you'll also know that their stock price has been coming off and their financials are also under pressure. So the Chinese industry has a lot of capacity, as you well know, and it's producing at these very high corn prices, and it tends to be suffering. Why should the cassava industry be worried about this? Well, to try and bring things down to a simple view, this picture kind of explains. So, if you take corn in the US, you get about 10 tons per hectare, and about 6 tons of starch out of that. But then the rest of the corn, you get as a byproduct, which you can buy back extra starch. So roughly you're getting 9 tons of starch per hectare out of the US. Suppose you carry that into Asia. As you carry it, you're losing maybe 60% of your byproduct in freight, but still you're carrying 7 tons of starch into Asia. If you look in China, because the corn yields are so much lower, and because the structure of the byproduct prices is different, you're getting maybe 4.5 tons of starch per hectare across the country as a whole. In Thailand, again, you can get 6 tons, similar to US corn. And when you carry it into Asia, you only lose maybe 10% in the freight. So structurally, cassava is a relatively efficient carbohydrate in Asia. So what should happen? a couple of things. The first is that the efficiency of US corn will continue to put pressure on the Chinese market, and that should open opportunities within Asia. But also, Thai cassava needs to keep pace with US corn if it's to make the most of this structural advantage that it has.
Right. So should market intervention be considered a good or a bad thing in this case then?
So for the Chinese farmer, it's a good thing. It turns out that this 45 billion subsidy into Asia is also benefiting the Thai farmer.
Yes.
But the trouble is that long term, it's not really benefiting the industry, because long term it makes the root price rather expensive at the same time as all the product prices are rather cheap. So it's making investment in the industry hard long term.
When you say long term, Mr. Bentley, how many years are we talking about here?
Until something breaks, really, or something changes in Asia.
All right. Well, of course, we will have the Chinese
So
perspective
some
coming up.
of my colleagues will be able to give you a bit deeper insight.
Uh-huh. Right. So any other problems that we're facing in the region?
So just to give you a sense of, so I guess if you're involved in the industry, there's a lot of projects being promoted at the moment, and lots of interest in looking at irrigation and mechanization of cassava in Asia. The problem is that at the moment, if you want to build a sweetener project, you've got fructose at around $400 within the region. It's very hard to build, coming out of China, it's very hard to build cassava sweetener projects in that kind of a market. So the root price is under pressure, and at the same time, a lot of starch capacity from China is putting pressure on the product prices. So I guess, where is this going to go? Something has to change.
What has to change?
The corn price has to adopt a reasonable relationship with the world market. How is that going to happen? The strange thing is, it's to do with harmony in the region. The more, let's say, intergovernmental
Intervention?
conversation that there is, the more China is able to feel secure about its food policy, the more it's able to look to external sources of carbohydrate. That will benefit the entire industry. So it's a simple but complicated problem, if you understand.
Right. So who should make the first move for this to happen?
Let's put it this way. The Thais have a great deal to benefit from this arrangement. Any change in this structure could potentially bring a lot of value, because the region would have to look for another source of carbohydrate. This would be the obvious place to look. But how do you get at this opportunity? Well, the clear thing is you need yield. Mm-hmm. So this is the play that you have going forward. You have to develop yield.
I see.
So, really, to give my colleagues a chance, the interesting thing is that Thailand has already invested a lot of money in cassava.
In terms of research or production?
Both.
Both.
As it's one of the only countries that is doing serious research in cassava. And this is clearly a very long-term bet. So the interesting thing about this position is that as a long-term bet, I believe it's a good bet.
It is.
But it's not guaranteed to come off.
Because of other players?
Because of the structural issues within the market. But that yield equation is the thing that would tip the balance. Because going back to that one diagram, at 6 tons per hectare, cassava is interesting. At 10 tons of starch, which is possible, it becomes very, very interesting, and then you start to change the balance in Asia. So it's a difficult message for the industry, but it's a message that they kind of have to persevere and keep on going.
Right. All right, so that's pretty much it. So thank you, Mr. Bentley.